What if everything you needed to control your appetite, stabilize your blood sugar, and lose stubborn weight was already sitting in your grocery store? Right now, Ozempic and Wegovy are everywhere. Your doctor's talking about it, your neighbor's on it, you've seen the headlines. And honestly, the science behind it is real. These drugs work by mimicking a hormone your body already makes, a hormone called GLP-1. But here's what the pharmaceutical companies don't advertise. Certain foods trigger that exact same hormone, naturally, with no injection, no $1,000 a month prescription, and no side effects that leave you running to the bathroom. Today, I'm walking you through 7 of those foods, backed by peer-reviewed research, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use them if you're over 60. Stay with me through food number 4, because that one surprises even my patients who have been eating healthy for decades. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim, and this is Senior Health Review, where we cut through the noise so you can live better in your 60s, 70s, and beyond. Let's get into it. Before we get to the foods, let me take 90 seconds to explain what GLP-1 actually is, because understanding this will change the way you look at every single meal. GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide 1. Now, I know that sounds like something from a chemistry textbook. Here's the plain English version. GLP-1 is a hormone produced in your small intestine every time you eat. Think of it as your body's natural "I'm full" signal. When GLP-1 is released, 3 things happen. First, it tells your pancreas to release insulin, which pulls sugar out of your bloodstream and prevents dangerous spikes. Second, it slows down how quickly food moves through your digestive system. That means you stay full longer after eating. Third, and this is the one most people don't realize, it communicates directly with your brain to reduce cravings. It essentially turns down the volume on hunger. Now here's why this matters, especially if you're over 60. As we age, our gut's ability to produce GLP-1 naturally declines. At the same time, our cells become less sensitive to insulin. This is one of the key biological reasons why so many people, even people who haven't changed their diet at all, begin gaining weight in their 60s. It's not laziness, it's not lack of willpower, it's biology. Ozempic and Wegovy work by flooding your system with a synthetic molecule that behaves just like GLP-1. That's why they're effective. But here's the question I ask my patients. What if you could stimulate your own body to produce more GLP-1, just by being smarter about what's on your plate? That's exactly what the research shows is possible. So let's get into the foods. Starting with a classic, and one that absolutely earns its reputation. Oats are one of the most well-studied GLP-1 boosting foods in the scientific literature, and the reason comes down to a specific type of soluble fiber called beta-glucan. When you eat oats, beta-glucan forms a thick, gel-like substance in your small intestine. That gel physically slows down digestion, and, more importantly, it directly stimulates the L cells in your gut lining to release GLP-1. A study published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that participants who consumed oat-based beta-glucan at breakfast showed significantly higher GLP-1 responses compared to those who ate other carbohydrate sources. The effect was particularly pronounced in older adults. For people over 60, oats carry a second major benefit. They actively lower LDL cholesterol, the so-called bad cholesterol. The FDA has recognized this for decades. So with one bowl, you're getting cardiovascular protection and metabolic support at the same time. Now, and this is important, not all oats are equal. Steel-cut oats and old-fashioned rolled oats retain most of their beta-glucan. The instant oats that come in flavored packets, much of that fiber has been processed away, and the added sugar works directly against you. Practical target: half a cup of dry rolled oats or steel-cut oats cooked with water or unsweetened almond milk. Add a handful of berries and a tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and you've just stacked 2 GLP-1 triggers before 9 a.m. Now, I know some of you were told for years to limit eggs because of cholesterol. I want to put that conversation to rest today. For healthy adults over 60 who aren't managing a condition that specifically restricts dietary cholesterol, eggs are not the enemy. In fact, they're one of the most powerful GLP-1 stimulating foods you can eat. Here's the mechanism. Eggs are rich in high-quality, complete protein and healthy fats. Both of these macronutrients are strong, independent triggers for GLP-1 release in the gut. Studies consistently show that a protein-rich breakfast produces a significantly higher and longer-lasting GLP-1 response than a carbohydrate-heavy one. A landmark study out of the University of Missouri found that adults who ate eggs for breakfast consumed meaningfully fewer calories at lunch, without deliberately trying to eat less. Their GLP-1 levels were measurably elevated throughout the entire morning. For people in their 60s and 70s, eggs carry 2 additional advantages worth mentioning. First, they're one of the best dietary sources of choline, a nutrient directly linked to brain health and memory function. Second, they contain leucine, an amino acid that helps preserve lean muscle mass, which becomes increasingly difficult to maintain as we age. Practical target: 2 to 3 eggs at breakfast, prepared however you enjoy them, scrambled, poached, hard-boiled. Pair them with oats from food number 1, and you're already generating serious metabolic momentum before you leave the house. If you're finding this valuable, go ahead and hit the subscribe button right now. Every week on this channel, I put out research-based videos specifically for adults over 60. No fads, no gimmicks, just what the science actually says. Food number 3 is something I genuinely wish every one of my patients over 60 was eating consistently. Avocado. The reason avocado made this list isn't the potassium, though that is excellent for blood pressure. It's the monounsaturated fat content, specifically a fatty acid called oleic acid. Research has shown that monounsaturated fats are among the most effective dietary triggers for GLP-1 release in the gut. When oleic acid reaches your small intestine, it activates specific receptors that signal your gut to produce GLP-1. The result is slower gastric emptying, sustained fullness, and a significantly gentler rise in blood sugar after a meal. A 2019 study published in the journal Nutrients found that adding half an avocado to a meal significantly increased GLP-1 levels and reduced hunger hormones in the hours that followed, compared to eating the identical meal without avocado. The satiety effect lasted well into the afternoon. What I love about avocado specifically for older adults is that the anti-inflammatory properties of its fats also benefit joint health and cardiovascular function, 2 things that become increasingly critical in our 60s and 70s. Practical target: half an avocado per day. Slice it onto your morning eggs. Mash it onto whole grain toast for lunch. Add cubes of it to a dinner salad. It's versatile, deeply satisfying, and your gut will thank you for it. All right, this is the one I promised you. The one that surprises most people, including patients of mine who have been eating carefully for years. Whey protein. When most people hear those words, they think of young bodybuilders at the gym. I want to reframe this completely, because whey protein may be the single most underutilized GLP-1 tool available to people over 60. Here's what the research shows. Whey protein is one of the most potent stimulators of GLP-1 secretion of any food or supplement that has been formally studied, more than most plant-based proteins, more than most whole foods consumed in isolation. A study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that consuming 20 to 30 grams of whey protein before or with a meal led to GLP-1 levels that were dramatically higher than those observed with carbohydrate-matched meals. And critically, this effect was especially pronounced in older adults. Why? Because whey is unusually rich in specific amino acids, particularly leucine, isoleucine, and valine, that directly activate the L cells in your gut lining to secrete GLP-1. Whey also triggers a rapid, clean insulin response that helps manage post-meal blood sugar spikes effectively. And here's the bonus that's directly relevant for this audience. Muscle loss, clinically called sarcopenia, is one of the most serious and underappreciated health risks for people over 60. It contributes to falls, frailty, reduced metabolism, and loss of independence. Whey protein is the gold standard nutritional intervention for preserving and rebuilding lean muscle mass in older adults. It's doing double duty. Practical approach. A simple, unflavored or lightly flavored whey protein powder, 20 to 30 grams, stirred into your morning oatmeal, mixed into plain Greek yogurt, or blended into a smoothie. Look for whey protein isolate or concentrate with a short, clean ingredient list. If you're sensitive to lactose, whey protein isolate is typically very well tolerated, since most of the lactose is removed during processing. This is one conversation I genuinely encourage every listener to have with their doctor or registered dietitian. We're halfway through the list, and next week's video goes deep on insulin resistance after 60. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Food number 5 brings us to something a lot of people overlook completely when they're thinking about metabolism. Fermented foods, plain Greek yogurt, kefir, kimchi, sauerkraut, miso. Here's the GLP-1 connection that most people aren't aware of. Your gut bacteria aren't passive passengers in your digestive system. Specific beneficial strains, particularly lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, produce compounds called short-chain fatty acids when they ferment dietary fiber. And those short-chain fatty acids are a direct, continuous stimulus for GLP-1 secretion. This means a healthier gut microbiome doesn't just help you digest better, it means more consistent baseline GLP-1 production throughout the entire day. Not just spikes after meals, but a steadier, ongoing metabolic signal. Now, why does this matter more for people over 60? Because gut microbiome diversity naturally decreases with age. Medications, particularly antibiotics, certain blood pressure drugs, and proton pump inhibitors, can further disrupt the microbial landscape. This age-related decline in gut bacterial diversity is one of the hidden drivers of the metabolic changes we see in older adults, including weight gain, blood sugar instability, and decreased immune function. Practical approach. 1 serving of plain Greek yogurt or kefir daily is an excellent and easy starting point. If you tolerate fermented vegetables, add a small portion of kimchi or sauerkraut to your lunch or dinner 2 to 3 times per week. When you're shopping, look for products labeled live and active cultures. That's how you confirm the beneficial bacteria are still alive in the product. Food number 6 is the group that's easiest to add to your daily routine, because it requires absolutely zero cooking. Nuts and seeds, specifically almonds, walnuts, and ground flaxseed. Almonds and walnuts are rich in both healthy monounsaturated fats and plant-based protein. Similar to avocado, their fat composition stimulates GLP-1 release in the gut. Multiple well-designed studies have shown that consuming a small handful of almonds before a meal significantly reduces the post-meal blood sugar spike, largely through GLP-1 stimulation and the slowing of gastric emptying. Ground flaxseed brings something additional. It's packed with soluble fiber and plant compounds called lignans, which provide a sustained GLP-1 stimulus similar in mechanism to the beta-glucan in oats. 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed added to yogurt, oatmeal, or a salad is enough to produce a measurable effect. For people over 60, nuts also deliver vitamin E for cellular protection, magnesium for blood pressure and muscle function, and, in the case of walnuts, omega-3 fatty acids that actively support brain health and reduce systemic inflammation. One important practical note: nuts are calorie-dense. We're talking about a small handful, roughly 1 ounce, or about 23 almonds, as the appropriate serving, not by the cupful. You're using them strategically, as a pre-meal appetizer or a between-meal option that keeps GLP-1 elevated and prevents the intense hunger that leads to overeating later. And our final food, possibly the most accessible of all 7. Leafy greens: spinach, broccoli, kale, Swiss chard, arugula. Now, vegetables are good for you, that's not a headline. But the specific mechanism here is worth understanding because it changes how you use them strategically. Leafy greens are rich in insoluble fiber and certain phytonutrients. Cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and kale contain a compound called sulforaphane. Research has shown that these compounds directly stimulate GLP-1 secretion, but more uniquely, leafy greens do something the other foods on this list don't accomplish quite as dramatically. They blunt the blood sugar spike from everything else you eat in the same meal. This leads to what researchers call the food order effect, and it's genuinely one of the most practical metabolic tools available without any prescription. If you eat your leafy greens first at a meal, before your protein, before your carbohydrates, GLP-1 is already elevated by the time you're eating the rest of your food. Your blood sugar response to that entire meal is measurably lower. A clinical study conducted in Japan followed this principle with older adults who had prediabetes. Participants who simply changed the order in which they ate, vegetables first, protein second, carbohydrates last, reduced their post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 29%. No change in what they ate, only when. 29% from changing the order of your fork. Practical target: 2 to 3 cups of leafy greens per day. In a salad before your meal, steamed alongside dinner, blended into a morning smoothie, or sautéed with garlic and olive oil as a side. And whenever possible, put them on your fork first. So now you have your 7 foods. But how do you actually build a day around them without turning every meal into a science experiment? Let me give you a simple, realistic framework. For breakfast, the combination that produces the strongest GLP-1 response of any meal I can describe is this: half a cup of rolled oats with 1 scoop of whey protein stirred directly in, topped with a handful of blueberries and 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed. If you're still hungry, 2 eggs alongside. That single breakfast touches 5 of the 7 foods on this list. You're already ahead before most people have finished their coffee. For lunch, build on a green base first. A large bed of spinach or arugula, eat some of it before anything else on your plate. Then top it with your protein: grilled chicken, canned salmon, a hard-boiled egg, or cottage cheese if you prefer something lighter. Add a quarter of an avocado and a small handful of walnuts. Skip the croutons. A drizzle of olive oil and fresh lemon is all the dressing you need. For dinner, lead with your vegetables regardless of what else you're serving. Make sure you've eaten your greens, and if you enjoy fermented foods, even 2 tablespoons of sauerkraut or a small bowl of miso soup before your main dish, before you move on to any starchy sides. And the single most important non-food variable? Slow down. GLP-1 release is not instantaneous. It takes approximately 15 to 20 minutes from the start of eating for GLP-1 levels to rise meaningfully in your bloodstream. People who eat quickly bypass that window entirely and consume far more food than they need before the fullness signal ever arrives. Put your fork down between bites. Have a conversation. Drink some water. Give your gut the time it needs to do its job. One more thing, and this is important. None of this replaces a medication your doctor has prescribed. If you're currently on Ozempic, metformin, or any diabetes or weight management medication, please do not stop or adjust it based on dietary changes alone. Have that conversation with your physician first. What this plan gives you is a powerful nutritional foundation that complements whatever your medical team has recommended, whether you're actively managing a condition or simply working to stay lean, energetic, and healthy as you age. I want to take 2 minutes on the flip side, because certain things actively suppress GLP-1, and if you're eating them regularly, they're quietly undoing all the work of everything I just described. Number 1. Refined sugar and ultra-processed carbohydrates. White bread, pastries, sweetened beverages, packaged snack foods. These cause a rapid insulin spike that, over time, is associated with reduced GLP-1 sensitivity. The more frequently you consume them, the less responsive your gut becomes to the foods that should be boosting your hormone levels. Number 2. Ultra-processed foods in general. These are products with long ingredient lists full of emulsifiers, artificial flavors, and chemical preservatives. Research from the National Institutes of Health has shown that diets heavy in ultra-processed foods directly alter the gut microbiome in ways that reduce the populations of GLP-1 producing bacteria. You can eat all the fermented foods in the world and still undermine your microbiome if ultra-processed food is your baseline. Number 3. Eating too fast. I've said this twice today, and I'll say it one more time because it's that important. Speed eating is one of the most consistent GLP-1 suppressors. The window between starting a meal and feeling full is about 20 minutes. Eat faster than that, and GLP-1 never gets to do its job. None of these are new ideas, but understanding the mechanism, knowing exactly why these things harm your metabolism, makes them feel less like arbitrary dietary rules and more like logical, obvious choices. Let's bring it home. 7 foods that work with your body's own GLP-1 system. Oats for their beta-glucan fiber. Eggs for complete sustained protein. Avocado for its monounsaturated fat content. Whey protein, the most underused tool in senior nutrition. Fermented foods to support your gut microbiome's GLP-1 production. Nuts and seeds for sustained metabolic signaling between meals. And leafy greens, which boost GLP-1 and reshape every meal when you put them first on your fork. You don't need all 7 every single day. Start with 2 or 3 this week. Swap your instant oats for rolled oats. Add a handful of almonds before your next big meal. Put the salad on your fork before the pasta. Small changes, stacked consistently, produce real and lasting results. I've watched patients in their 60s and 70s make meaningful improvements in their blood sugar control, their energy, and their weight, not with a prescription, but with a more intentional relationship with what they put on their plate. Your biology is not fixed. You have far more influence over it than you've probably been told. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Which of these 7 foods surprised you the most? I read every single comment on this channel, and your questions directly shape what I cover next. If this video gave you something useful today, please subscribe. And if you know someone who's been asking about Ozempic or struggling with blood sugar or weight after 60, share this with them. It might save them a very expensive and uncomfortable conversation. Next week, we're going deep on insulin resistance in adults over 60. what's actually causing it, and the 5 lifestyle levers that reverse it faster than most people expect. That's a video you don't want to miss. I'm Dr. Leonid Kim. Take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you next week.